My girlfriend laughed. Of course, I told my friends about your quick change. I didn't say anything. Then I accidentally included those same files on the USB drive I gave her father for his art exhibition. The silence on her part, that's pure bliss. I had always believed that Chloe was different. My name is Ethan, and I'm 28 years old, living in Baltimore, Maryland. As a graphic designer, I've learned to see beauty even in the messy details, and for a while, I thought Chloe was just that, beautifully complicated. We'd been together for 2 years, and despite my own struggles with performance anxiety, she never made me feel lesser. Or so I thought. That night was one of those sticky summer evenings where the air felt heavy and still. I was headed to Chloe's apartment to grab my sketchbook, a crucial part of my upcoming client pitch. She was hosting a ladies' wine night, so I figured I'd just slip in, grab the sketchbook, and head out unnoticed. The apartment door was slightly ajar when I arrived. I hesitated for a moment, not wanting to intrude, but the thought of messing up tomorrow's presentation pushed me forward. I eased the door open quietly, trying to be invisible. Their laughter drifted into the small foyer, loud and carefree. Chloe's voice stood out, her laughter brighter than the others. My heart thudded in my chest as I stepped inside. I didn't want to eavesdrop, but their voices carried in the cozy apartment. "Oh my God, you should have seen his face," Chloe said, her voice full of mocking glee. "He just sort of faded away, like he always does." The room erupted in laughter, a sharp, biting sound that cut right through me. I froze in the hallway, my sketchbook half forgotten at my side. Chloe's friend, Heather, spoke up next, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "I swear, Chloe, you've got to stop calling it the quick fade. It's just too much. Come on," Chloe said, giggling. "It's a joke. He never lasts more than a couple minutes anyway." I felt my face go hot, my legs rooted to the floor. Chloe's friends laughed harder, their voices a blur of mean-spirited humor. My stomach twisted, and I wanted to bolt. But I couldn't move. I couldn't even breathe. Heather added, "Seriously, I don't know how you put up with that. Doesn't it get boring after a while?" Chloe's laughter was like a knife. "I guess I'm just used to it. Poor Ethan. He tries so hard. But it's kind of pathetic, you know?" The way she said my name, like it was a punchline, hurt more than I thought possible. My head spun. My sketchbook slipped from my fingers, landing on the carpet without a sound. None of them noticed. I stood there in the shadows, listening to my girlfriend turn my deepest insecurity into cheap entertainment. She hadn't just told them. She turned it into a running joke, something to be shared and laughed at over wine and gossip. I felt a surge of something. Anger, humiliation, maybe both. My hands were shaking. I could have barged in there, demanded she explain herself, told her exactly how it felt to hear her call me pathetic. But I didn't. I turned around, carefully picking up my sketchbook. My fingers brushed against the soft cover, grounding me for a moment. I backed away slowly, making sure the door didn't creak as I left. Outside, the air felt different. Cooler, almost. My mind was racing as I walked down the block, but I kept my face calm. My heart was pounding in my chest, but I didn't let it show. I just kept walking, putting distance between me and that laughter. I didn't know what came next. All I knew was that the girl I thought I loved had betrayed me in the worst way possible. She had turned my most vulnerable moment into a joke for her friends. And as I headed home, the betrayal burned in my mind, steady and unrelenting. When I got back to my apartment, I set the sketchbook down on my coffee table and just stood there, staring at it. My place was silent, but my mind was anything but. Chloe's voice kept echoing in my head, every cruel word replaying like a bad dream I couldn't shake. I sank down onto the couch, feeling numb and hollow. My chest felt tight, like I couldn't quite catch my breath. I tried to remind myself that I had a big presentation tomorrow, that I needed to sleep and be sharp. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw Chloe's smirk, heard that mocking laugh. I don't know how long I sat there, just listening to the quiet of my own apartment. Minutes, maybe hours. It didn't matter. Eventually, the shock gave way to something else. A calm, icy kind of resolve. I wasn't going to let Chloe's laughter define me. I wasn't going to let her betrayal sink me. I remembered, out of nowhere, that a few weeks ago Chloe had borrowed my work tablet to help with some design ideas for her father's upcoming art exhibit. She'd forgotten to log out of her design app, and I hadn't thought much of it at the time. But now, with her laughter still fresh in my ears, I felt a sudden, powerful need for answers. I opened the app on my tablet, my hand steady. Chloe's account was still logged in. A small, careless oversight on her part. Her folders were all there, neatly organized. I hesitated, feeling a pang of guilt. But then I remembered how she had humiliated me in front of her friends, how she'd stripped me down to a punchline. I clicked into a folder marked Personal and found a collection of screenshots. My heart thumped hard as I scrolled through them. There they were, our private texts, little jokes, and flirty messages we'd shared. Things I'd never wanted anyone else to see. She'd saved them, every single one. I felt a cold fury rise up in my chest. This wasn't just one night of betrayal. Chloe had been stockpiling my most vulnerable moments, turning them into trophies. I saw screenshots of me apologizing for my anxiety, of me opening up about how it made me feel like less of a man. She had kept them all, like they were nothing but a collection of curiosities. My jaw clenched. I closed the app, taking a long, deep breath. I wasn't going to blow up her phone with demands for an explanation. I wasn't going to drive over there and scream at her. That would just be giving her more power, more of my energy. No, I thought. If she wanted to treat my trust like a game, I was going to show her that some games had real consequences. I spent the rest of that night making a plan in my head. Methodical, careful. I thought about her father's exhibit, how she'd asked me to drop off the USB drive with the plans and promotional materials next week. Mr. Carter was a serious man, all about family image and polished reputations. I'd met him once, at a dinner where he'd barely spoken to me, but I knew enough to know he wouldn't be impressed by his daughter's petty gossip. I felt a chill run through me, but it wasn't fear. It was a sense of finality. Chloe had turned me into a joke. Now she was going to find out what happened when you turned loyalty into a weapon. I didn't sleep much that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, going over everything in my mind. Every time her laughter tried to worm its way back in, I reminded myself, I wasn't going to let her own this narrative. I was going to take it back. By morning, I felt strangely clear. The betrayal was still there, heavy and bruising. But now it was a fuel, something I could channel into action. Chloe thought she could humiliate me and walk away unscathed. She was about to learn otherwise. By the time the sun rose the next day, I knew exactly what I was going to do. My apartment was still and quiet, but I was already moving, every step deliberate. I made myself a cup of coffee, the warm mug steadying my hands as I thought it all through. Chloe didn't know what I'd found. She didn't know I had access to her saved messages, her little collection of my secrets. And I wasn't going to tell her. Not yet. Instead, I decided to focus on what she cared about most, her father's upcoming exhibit. Mr. Carter's gallery opening was a big deal in Baltimore. Chloe had been talking about it for months, how it would be the biggest event of the year, how her father's reputation was riding on it. She'd even roped me in to help design the promotional materials. I'd put in extra hours, late nights, making sure every piece was perfect. Chloe had been so grateful back then, all sweet smiles and warm kisses. It felt like a lifetime ago. She'd given me a USB drive a few days ago, asking me to load the final exhibit plans on it before handing it off to Mr. Carter. I hadn't done it yet. Now, as I sat at my desk, I opened up the drive and copied the files Chloe wanted. But I added something else, a new folder labeled Backups, buried deep in the structure where Mr. Carter was sure to find it. I carefully copied over the screenshots and saved text Chloe had kept. Nothing explicit, no faces or anything too revealing. Just enough to show exactly what she'd been doing behind my back, how she'd turned me into a sideshow for her friends. I paused for a moment, my finger hovering over the mouse. A part of me felt almost wrong, like I was about to cross a line that couldn't be uncrossed. But then I remembered the way she'd laughed, the way her friends had snickered at my expense. And I thought about how she hadn't even tried to hide it. She hadn't cared if it hurt me. That thought made my decision clear. She wanted to treat my vulnerabilities like cheap entertainment? Then she could face the fallout. I wasn't going to scream or make a scene. I wasn't going to let her paint me as the crazy, overreacting boyfriend. No, I was going to let her own words do the talking. I finished adding the files and labeled the folder innocuously. I didn't want to be vindictive, but I wanted Mr. Carter to see the truth. He was the kind of man who valued appearances above all else. If Chloe was going to mock my struggles, then she could explain it to the one person she'd been trying so hard to impress. I stared at the USB drive in my hand when I was done. It felt small and harmless, like it couldn't possibly carry the weight of everything it contained. But I knew better. I slipped it into my backpack, my mind oddly calm. The rest of the day passed in a blur. I went through the motions, finalizing the exhibit posters, double-checking Chloe's requested updates. She texted me around noon, all breezy and casual. Hey babe, thanks again for helping with the USB. Let me know when you're heading over to my dad's. I read the message and felt nothing. No anger, no heartbreak. Just a quiet certainty that I was done playing the fool. That evening, I double-checked the USB one last time. Everything was in place. I slipped it into a small envelope and packed it in my messenger bag. I wasn't sure what would happen when Mr. Carter saw what was on it. But I didn't need to know. My part was done. Chloe had turned my secrets into a punchline. Now she was going to learn that secrets had a way of turning back on you when you least expected it. The next morning, I woke up feeling clear-headed for the first time in days. The sun was just starting to break through the clouds as I got dressed, pulling on a button-down shirt and jeans. Simple, clean, unassuming. I wanted to look like the helpful assistant Chloe had always made me out to be. I grabbed the envelope with the USB drive and slipped it into my bag, feeling its weight like a promise. Chloe had asked me to drop it off at the gallery this morning, a favor that would have felt like an honor once. Now, it just felt like another chance to show her what happened when you crossed someone who'd given you nothing but trust. The gallery was a small, elegant space in the heart of Mount Vernon, all sleek lines and white walls. Mr. Carter was already there when I arrived, talking to a couple of the exhibit staff about lighting adjustments. He was an older man, with a trim gray beard and a presence that made everyone in the room stand a little taller. When he saw me, he gave a polite nod, though his eyes were wary. He never fully trusted me. Maybe he'd always seen the gap between me and Chloe. "Ethan," he said as I approached, his tone measured. "Chloe told me you'd be stopping by." "Yeah," I said, keeping my voice light. "She asked me to drop off the final plans for the exhibit." I pulled out the envelope and handed it to him. "Everything's here. Floor plans, promotional materials, and a backup folder Chloe had saved." Mr. Carter took the envelope, his brow creasing just slightly. "A backup folder?" I shrugged, careful to keep my face neutral. "Yeah, she didn't want anything left out. She said it might be useful, so I included it. I just wanted to make sure you had everything." He didn't say much to that, just gave a small nod and a tight-lipped smile. "I appreciate your thoroughness, Ethan," he said. "You've always been reliable." "Of course," I said, happy to help. For a second, he studied me, his eyes sharp and assessing. I wondered if he could tell that something was different, if he could see that I wasn't just some love-struck kid doing his girlfriend's bidding anymore. But if he suspected, he didn't show it. "Well," he said finally, slipping the envelope under his arm. "I have a meeting with the curator in a few minutes. I'll make sure this gets looked over today." I nodded, feeling that strange, calm certainty settle over me again. "Good. Let me know if you have any questions." He gave me another polite nod before turning away, already focused on the next part of his carefully curated world. I watched him for a moment, then turned and walked out of the gallery, my footsteps quiet on the polished floor. Outside, the air felt cooler, like the world was holding its breath. I didn't rush. I didn't let myself feel guilty or scared. I had done what I needed to do. Chloe wanted to play games with my trust. She'd learned that some games had higher stakes than she realized. As I walked back to my car, I thought about how easy it had been in the end. No yelling, no scenes, just a quiet handoff. The kind of calm, methodical move Chloe would never have seen coming. And that was exactly how I wanted it. I didn't hear anything from Chloe all day. Not a text, not a call. The silence was almost worse than anything else, like a calm before the storm. I knew her father wouldn't have wasted time. He was the type to get straight to the point, no matter how ugly it was. That evening, I was sitting on my couch, sketchbook in my lap, trying to focus on a new logo design, when my phone lit up. Chloe's name flashed across the screen. My stomach flipped, but I answered on the second ring, my voice as calm as I could manage. "Hey, what the hell did you do, Ethan?" she hissed. No greeting, no pause, just fury. "I gave your dad the files you asked me to drop off," I said evenly, "along with the backup folder you left on my tablet." She let out a sharp, disbelieving laugh. "Backup folder? Are you kidding me? Do you have any idea what you've done?" I leaned back on the couch, feeling strangely detached. "I gave him the truth, Chloe. That's all." "Oh my God, you're insane," she spat. "He's furious. He's threatening to pull me from the exhibit entirely. Do you know how important this is for me?" I didn't say anything. She kept going, her voice cracking now. "You're petty, Ethan. You're so damn petty." "Those were private conversations." "They were about me," I said, my voice tightening just a little. "Private conversations where you mocked me, where you turned my most personal struggles into a joke for your friends." There was a long silence on the line. Then she tried a different tactic. "Ethan, I swear, it was just girls' night banter. I didn't mean anything by it." I almost laughed. "So it was just harmless fun?" "Because it didn't feel harmless when I was standing there listening to you all laughing at me." She let out a shaky breath. "It was a misunderstanding. You're blowing this way out of proportion." I took a breath, steady and calm. "I'm not the one who blew it out of proportion, Chloe. You did that when you decided to treat my trust like gossip fodder." She went quiet again, and I could almost hear her scrambling for a way out. "Finally," she said, "I didn't think you'd actually do this. You've always been so passive." "Not anymore," I said quietly. For a moment, there was nothing but her shaky breathing. Then another voice cut in, Heather, her friend from that night. "She must have been with Chloe." "You're seriously deranged, Ethan," she snapped. "You don't ruin someone's life over a few jokes." I didn't bother responding to her. I just ended the call. Almost immediately, the text started flooding in. Chloe's friends, accusing me of being petty, of overreacting, of trying to destroy her life over harmless girl talk. One after another, that piled on, trying to paint me as the bad guy. But I didn't respond. Not to any of them. I didn't need to. Chloe had crossed a line, and this was the fallout. About an hour later, Chloe sent me one last message. I read it twice, then deleted it without replying. I didn't owe her an explanation. Not anymore. That night, I slept deeper than I had in weeks. When I woke up the next morning, my phone was quiet. No missed calls. No new texts. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was finally free from Chloe's manipulative hold. And I knew, deep down, this was just the beginning. A couple of days later, I heard a knock at my apartment door. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I paused for a moment before opening it. When I did, it was Chloe's mother, Miriam, standing there in a neatly pressed coat, her eyes rimmed red. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. "Ethan," she said softly, her voice trembling just a little. "Can I come in?" I hesitated, but stepped back and let her inside. She perched on the edge of my couch, folding her hands tightly in her lap. I sat across from her, waiting. "I don't even know where to begin," she said, her voice breaking. "Chloe told me what happened. Or, at least, her version of it. I didn't say anything. I just watched her, feeling the weight of her presence in my small living room. She's a mess, Ethan," Miriam continued, her eyes pleading. "Her father is furious. He's talking about cutting her off completely, taking away her job at the gallery, the apartment he pays for, everything. She's scared." I nodded slowly. "I imagine she is." She winced, as if I'd slapped her. "Please," she said. "Chloe made a mistake. She knows that now. But you have to understand. She's young. She doesn't always think things through." I raised an eyebrow. "She didn't just make a mistake, Miriam. She didn't just slip up. She mocked me, mocked my most vulnerable moments, and shared them with her friends. She made me a joke." Miriam's eyes shimmered with tears. I know, and I'm not trying to excuse it. But please, Ethan. Her father is a proud man. He doesn't take well to scandal. He's already told her that if she can't fix this, he's done with her." I looked at her, feeling a flicker of something, maybe pity, maybe just exhaustion. "Miriam," I said quietly, "I'm not the one who needs to fix this. Chloe did this to herself." She reached out across the coffee table, her hand trembling. "Ethan, I'm begging you. Tell her father it was all a misunderstanding. That you were just angry. That you didn't mean for it to go this far." I sat back in my chair, feeling the cold calm that had settled over me ever since that night. "It wasn't a misunderstanding," I said softly. "Chloe told me exactly how she felt, how she thought I was pathetic, how she laughed at me with her friends. And she didn't care who heard it." Miriam's tears slipped down her cheeks. "She's your girlfriend. She was your girlfriend. Doesn't that mean anything to you?" I took a deep breath. "It used to, but not anymore." She showed me exactly what I meant to her. "I'm not going to lie for her, Miriam. I'm not going to pretend this didn't happen." She wiped her eyes quickly, trying to pull herself together. "You're punishing her. Don't you see that? This isn't just about you anymore. It's her whole life." I shook my head slowly. "She's facing the consequences of her own actions. That's not my responsibility to fix." Miriam stared at me for a long moment, and I could see the defeat settling in her shoulders. She stood up, smoothing her coat with trembling hands. "I thought you were different," she whispered. "I thought you were the kind of man who would do the right thing, even if it hurt." I met her gaze evenly. "I'm doing the right thing, Miriam. I'm done protecting someone who never cared about protecting me." She opened her mouth like she wanted to say more, but no words came out. Finally, she turned and walked to the door. I watched her go, feeling a strange kind of relief settle over me as the door clicked shut behind her. For the first time in years, I realized I didn't have to clean up Chloe's mess. I didn't have to fix things that weren't mine to fix. And as I sat back down at my desk, I felt lighter somehow, like I'd finally let go of a weight I didn't even realize I'd been carrying. A week went by with nothing but radio silence from Chloe. No calls. No texts. Nothing. I'd almost started to believe she was just going to disappear quietly, but I should have known better. It started small. A couple of snide comments from mutual friends who didn't know the full story. Then a friend of mine from the design world pulled me aside one morning at a cafe. "Hey," he said carefully, "I don't know if you've heard, but Chloe's been saying some pretty wild things about you." I raised an eyebrow. "Like what?" He hesitated. "That you're obsessive. Controlling. She's telling people you tried to ruin her life because you couldn't handle her moving on." For a second, I just stared at him. Then I let out a breath and leaned back in my chair. Of course, Chloe wasn't going to own up to what she'd done. She was going to rewrite the story. By the end of the week, the rumors had made their way to my workplace. Whispers in the break room. Colleagues exchanging glances when they thought I wasn't looking. Chloe was painting me as some unstable ex who had gone nuclear out of jealousy. But I didn't let it get to me. I'd already seen enough of who she really was to know her games. And I wasn't about to play defense against her lies. I decided to do what I did best, stay calm and let the truth do the talking. I sat down one evening and drafted an email, a single, precise message addressed to Chloe and all her little circle of friends who'd been sending me their unsolicited judgments. I kept it simple, but it was enough. I wrote, I know the rumors you're spreading about me. Let me be perfectly clear. I have records of everything. Every text, every screenshot, every humiliating conversation that you thought was so funny. If you continue to spread lies about me, I will take legal action for defamation. Consider this your only warning. I hit send and let the words speak for themselves. Within a couple of hours, I got a few panicked replies, friends who hadn't realized how deep this went, trying to backpedal and apologize. Chloe didn't respond at all. The next day at work, a couple of my coworkers who I'd always trusted came up to me quietly. We're with you, they said, voices hushed but steady. We know who you are, Ethan. We know she's just trying to cover her own tracks. I nodded, feeling something like gratitude warm my chest. It wasn't about taking sides. It was about people seeing me for who I really was, not the caricature Chloe was trying to sell. A few days later, the tide started to turn. The friends who had jumped on Chloe's bandwagon started going quiet, too embarrassed to admit they'd been wrong. At work, the rumors stopped. My boss even called me in, not to scold me, but to tell me he trusted me, that the quality of my work spoke louder than any gossip. Chloe's smear campaign had failed, and all it had really done was show me that I didn't need to waste another second of my life on her manipulations. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was standing on solid ground again. Chloe's lies couldn't touch me here. My life was mine to build, and no amount of petty rumors could change that. It was about 2 weeks after everything had settled down when Chloe called me. It was late in the evening, the sun had already set, and the quiet of my apartment felt like a shield. Her name lit up my phone, and I hesitated for a moment, staring at it. Then I answered. Ethan? Her voice was small, shaky. Please, can we talk? I leaned back in my chair, my tone calm. Talk about what, Chloe? She sniffled, and I realized she was crying. I can't do this anymore. My dad won't even look at me. He cut me off from everything, the apartment, my job at the gallery. He won't talk to me, and I'm losing everything. I let out a slow breath. And you're calling me because you think I can fix it for you? No, she said quickly. I need you to understand. I never meant to hurt you. It was stupid, Ethan. I was stupid. Please, can't we put this behind us? I closed my eyes for a moment, steadying my voice. Chloe, you didn't just hurt me. You betrayed me. You took something I shared with you in confidence and turned it into a joke for your friends. She let out a sob. I know, and I'm so sorry. I didn't think you'd actually ruin my life over it. I didn't ruin your life, I said quietly. You did that yourself. She went silent, but I could hear her breathing, ragged, desperate. Ethan, please, she whispered. I'm losing everything. My apartment, my job, my friends are all turning on me. I'm scared. For a second, a flicker of the old me, the me who would have dropped everything to comfort her, tried to push through. But then I remembered how she'd laughed at me, how she'd made me feel like nothing. And I remembered how hard it had been to claw my way back to this peace. I'm sorry you're going through this, I said softly. But this isn't my burden to carry. You made your choices. Now you're living with them. Her breath hitched. So that's it. You're just going to let me lose everything. I didn't waver. You lost my trust a long time ago, Chloe. I can't help you get it back. And I won't be manipulated into cleaning up your mess. She was quiet for a long time, then her voice hardened. You're so cold, Ethan. I thought you loved me. I let out a slow breath. I did love you. But I'm done letting you use that love as a weapon. This chapter of my life is closed, Chloe. I'm moving on. There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line. Then she let out a small, broken sob and hung up. I sat there for a long moment, my phone still in my hand, the echo of her voice lingering in the quiet. And for the first time since that night at her apartment, I felt free. Chloe had played her final card. And I'd shown her, calmly and firmly, that I wasn't the same man who would bend over backwards for her anymore. My chapter with her was over, and the next one was mine to write. It's been about a month since that final phone call. Sometimes it still feels surreal, like a bad dream that finally ended. But every morning I wake up and feel the quiet in my apartment, the absence of Chloe's chaos, and I know it's real. Chloe's world fell apart faster than I expected. Word got around that Mr. Carter had demoted her at the gallery. Last I heard, he gave her a menial role doing paperwork in the back office, stripping her of any real influence. He cut off her apartment funding too, said she could figure it out on her own. For a man who cared so much about appearances, Chloe's betrayal was a stain he couldn't ignore. She tried reaching out a few more times, a couple of texts that I didn't answer. Then nothing. I heard from a mutual friend that she'd moved in with a cousin across town, trying to start over. But that wasn't my problem anymore. I've been focusing on myself, really for the first time in years. I've reconnected with some old friends I hadn't seen in ages. One of them, Nate, invited me to join his weekend art group, Nothing serious, just people who love to paint and talk about life. It's been nice to be around people who actually get it, who see me for who I am instead of who they want me to be. I'm still working long hours, but they're hours spent on my own terms, building my brand, taking on projects that excite me. I've stopped feeling like I have to prove myself to anyone. My work has become mine again, not something to impress Chloe or her friends, just something that fulfills me. And I'm dating again, cautiously. I met someone through the art group, a woman named Lydia who laughs at my bad jokes and doesn't care that I'm not some perfect, polished guy. She doesn't know about Chloe, and I'm not in a hurry to tell her. I'm taking things slow, no expectations, no games. Sometimes I still think about that night at Chloe's apartment, how her laughter had felt like a knife. But it doesn't sting the way it used to. If anything, it reminds me of how far I've come. I've learned that real strength isn't about pretending you're fine when someone humiliates you. It's about knowing when to walk away and meaning it. One afternoon, I sat by the window in my living room, a cup of coffee in my hand, watching the late spring rain streak down the glass. I thought about Chloe's friends, how they'd accused me of overreacting, of being petty, and I realized they were wrong. It wasn't about revenge. It was about honesty, about drawing a line in the sand and refusing to let someone else define your worth. I've let go of the anger. I've let go of the need to explain myself to people who never really cared about me. And in that quiet, I found something I didn't know I'd been missing: peace. I don't know what comes next. I don't have it all figured out. But I know this: Chloe's betrayal doesn't get to own me. It's just a chapter, one of close for good. And for the first time in a long time, I'm actually excited to see what the next one holds.